Seraphina's puff. Stop! Fuck! I doubled over, bracing my hands on my knees as I struggled to breathe through the burning in my lungs. Someone must have connected a Bluetooth speaker to my heart because it was thundering so loudly that I barely heard when Lucian came to my side and said, "That's enough for today, Sarah." I shook my head, immediately regretting it as the training field tilted. No, I swallowed against the dryness in my mouth. I can keep going. Lucian? The sadistic bastard was gone, and Lucian, my friend, said in a gentle, patient voice, "You're done, Sarah." I straightened and winced when I felt a stitch in my side. "I haven't completed the course," I panted, resisting the urge to rub at the ache in my chest. I'd run the obstacle course at OTS 3 times before I got shot. Each time I finished drenched in sweat and mud with my palms scraped raw from climbing rocks. But I finished. Now, I'd collapsed halfway, feet planted in a muddy ravine as I tried to distinguish the ringing in my ears from the singing of the birds fleeting overhead, as if mocking my weakness. "I always finish," I whispered, staring longingly at the rest of the obstacles I had to overcome. I would probably die if I attempted to go on any further. "Yeah," Lucian said, "before you got shot by a silver bullet and had open heart surgery." "But healing takes time, Sarah." He placed a comforting hand on my back, although it was drenched with sweat. "You're not back to 100%, and that's okay." I huffed. "Being wolfless sucks." "Hey," he nudged me gently. "That's what saved you, remember?" "Right," I exhaled, wiping sweat off my brow and accidentally smearing mud on my forehead in the process. I reminded myself to be grateful that my weakness had saved my life. "Why don't you hit the showers and we'll go grab some dinner?" Lucian suggested. My first instinct was to kindly refuse the offer, being in no mood to be out in public. But then I remembered that I was going home to an empty house and leftover takeout in the fridge. So I gave Lucian a tired smile. "Sure. You're probably the first person I know who could wear a long face while in the moon garden." I blinked and pulled my gaze away from the evening primrose I'd picked and was fiddling with. The flames cast a warm glow on the side of Lucian's face as he smiled softly. "What's it going to take to cheer you up?" he asked. I exhaled, shaking my head. "I'm sorry, you've been so sweet taking me out to dinner and then this." I waved my hands toward our surroundings. The serene beauty here was marvelous, but the stupid thing was that I couldn't even appreciate it. "There's still something on your mind," Lucian noted. "Is it Daniel? You miss him?" My chest tightened. The admission tasted bitter. This was exactly why they'd sent Daniel away, because his mother was too damaged, too wolfless, too weak to protect him. We'd never been apart this long, not since the night he was born, when I'd counted each tiny finger through exhausted tears. Now every breath without him felt like drowning. Yes, the word tore from my throat. I miss him very much. The only thing that takes my mind off him is training. My fists clenched. If I could just become strong enough, fast enough, we can be together again. He nodded. "I get that, but you can't rush these things, Sarah. You're already doing so well for what you've been through." He squeezed my hand. "Progress isn't linear. There are highs and lows and twists and turns, but you'll get there, I know it." I cracked a genuine smile. "Thank you, Lucian, for being by my side and for taking the time out to train me." "Well, about that." "What?" "I was going to make it a surprise," he shrugged, "but I might as well tell you now." "What?" I pressed. "I've assigned you a new trainer." My face fell. "Oh, am I not meeting up to your standards?" His eyes widened slightly. "Oh, no, it's not like that. This trainer is an elite warrior, in many ways more skilled than I am. She'll guide you properly in your next phase of training." "Oh," I said, intrigue replacing my despondency. "Who is it?" "Well?" His gaze shifted to something to the left, and his face tightened. "You have got to be kidding me," he muttered. I frowned, turning in the direction of his line of sight. "What?" I bit back a groan of frustration when I saw the pair at the entrance to the garden, Celeste and Kieran. I turned back to Lucian and forced a smile. "We should get out of here." He nodded, taking my hand. "Yes, let's." As we stood, Celeste's saccharine voice carried across the flowers. "Oh, sister, we're interrupting something." I kept my mouth shut, a lesson I'd learned. Not rising to her bait, not giving her the satisfaction. Lucian's hand found the small of my back, warm and steady. "Let's go," he murmured, guiding me past them. "Excuse us," Lucian said, his tone bright and amicable. Kieran stood rigid as an oak, his eyes burning holes into the space where Lucian touched me. "Just move out of the way," I thought. "Just move out of the way and save us." "Really, Sarah?" "Ah, fuck." I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the interaction to come, and looked up. I shot Kieran a sardonic smile that only made the creases between his brows deepen. "What now, Blackthorn?" I asked. His nostrils flared like an enraged bull, finger jabbing toward Lucian with enough force to disturb the air between us. "You blocked me, practically shut me out of your life, and now you're parading the city with him?" I felt Lucian stiffen next to me. No matter how cordial he could be, he was still an alpha, and I was sure the disdain in Kieran's tone rubbed him the wrong way. I scoffed at Kieran. "Excuse me if I'm confused. Would you rather I parade the city with you?" Kieran's eyes widened indignantly, and he spluttered. "That's not what I—" "Because I don't know why I have to keep reminding you that we're fucking divorced, Kieran Blackthorn. I don't know what's been going on with you lately, but this jealous ex-routine is getting pathetic and, frankly, tiring." Celeste's eyes flashed with barely concealed anger. Her manicured hand clutched Kieran's arm, and she lashed out. "Oh, please, Sarah. If anyone is chasing an ex, it's you." I scoffed. "Yeah, because I'm the one blowing up his phone and demanding to escort him everywhere, and I'm the one who can't keep my nose out of his business." Something shuddered in Celeste's face, and I pressed down that familiar guilt. I'd bowed out. I'd moved out of the way so they could finally be together. I wasn't going to let anyone make me the villain of their story ever again. Celeste's lips trembled with theatrical precision. "Kieran," she whimpered, pressing closer to his side. "I want to leave." I barely suppressed an eye roll. "Don't bother, we were just—" Kieran wrapped an arm around Celeste's slender waist and tucked her into his side. His voice turned glacial. "Let me make this clear, Seraphina. The only part of your life that concerns me is Daniel. I tolerate your recklessness because my son—" "Yes," I snapped. "You've mentioned it quite enough times. You don't want Daniel growing up without a mother, I get it. But if you could, and I won't have you embarrassing him." I paused. "Excuse me?" He glanced at Lucian pointedly, his eyes hard with loathing, and said nothing. An incredulous laugh tore out of me. "Oh, that's fucking rich." I mimed, weighing an invisible object. "The hypocrisy is so thick I could sculpt it into a trophy for your next pack meeting." Kieran clenched his jaw, and I saw his free hand clenched into a fist, his knuckles bleaching white. I scoffed, grabbing Lucian's hand. "We're leaving. You two have a nice night." I pinned a glare on Kieran. "Stay the fuck away from me." I shouldered him out of the way and stomped off the roof, pulling Lucian along. To his credit, he let me drag him along as I angrily stomped to the elevator. I was still vibrating with anger when he turned on the car and merged onto the Hollywood freeway. "Sarah," he started hesitantly, "are you—" "The nerve of him," I snapped. "He parades around with my sister, confusing our son, flaunting their relationship, but I'm the embarrassment?" I dragged my hands down my face, resisting the urge to scream. Since when did Kieran become this shameless? Lucian rolled down the windows. "Scream if you need to." A faint smirk. "I wouldn't mind." I sighed, leaning my head slightly out of the window as the wind whipped tendrils of hair across my face, cooling my heated skin. "I'm sorry you got in the middle of all that," he shrugged. "Would you be mad if I said it was slightly entertaining?" I raised a brow, and he chuckled. His amusement was contagious, and I found myself smiling grudgingly, my anger gradually dissipating. I closed my eyes, letting the soft smile play on my lips. I didn't want to think about Kieran or Celeste. I hated how much headspace they'd already taken in my mind. I was determined to focus on the only things that mattered: my son, my career, and my training. Celeste and Kieran could very well jump off a skyscraper together, Kieran's pove. My shoulder still burned from where Sarah had brushed past me. The contact had been brief, but packed with enough tension that it sparked like a live wire. I stared at the exit long after she and Lucian had disappeared, a prickly electric sensation simmering beneath my skin. Anger, disbelief. Something else I wasn't ready to name. A quiet sigh broke my trance. I turned to Celeste. "I don't think I'm much in the mood for sightseeing anymore," she said. Her voice was calm, but something edged it, something I couldn't quite pin down. "Can we go?" I exhaled slowly, trying to expel the anger and unease lodged in my trachea. That moment with Sierra and Lucian had scraped open something jagged inside me, but Celeste was here, beside me. I needed to focus on that. I pulled her closer to me and pressed a kiss to her temple. "I'm so sorry." She shook her head gently. "I know it's not your fault." She wound her arms around my waist and gave me a small, hopeful smile. "Why don't we order takeout from the restaurant? Go back to your place. Just you and me. No surprises, no interruptions." More than anything, I wanted to be alone right now, but I swallowed down that feeling and smiled at Celeste. "That sounds perfect." Since she'd driven to the bar, Celeste and I drove separately back to my house. The drive back was short, but my thoughts ran far, looping in restless circles. It had been just over 3 weeks since the divorce, and 10 years of routine hadn't dissolved in 21 days. I still reached for habits that were no longer mine. Still paused at the door, expecting Daniel's thundering footsteps rushing to welcome me, Sarah's quiet, "Welcome home." I still half listened for the soft clink of her cooking in the kitchen, for the faint scent of cinnamon and clove wafting from a candle she'd always kept lit. But every time I walked into the house now, there was only empty silence. And tonight, when I stepped inside with Celeste's hand in mine, that silence echoed louder than ever. I tried to ignore it. This would be our home someday, mine and Celeste's. I had to start laying the foundation. She slipped her arms around my waist again, pressing her cheek to my chest. She murmured. "Feels like I've barely had a moment with you since I got back." I kissed the top of her head, closing my eyes for a beat. "I'm sorry. Things have just been chaotic." That was true, but it wasn't the whole truth. I needed to do better. I couldn't keep letting my past bleed into every moment of the present. Sarah was gone. Celeste was here. This was my second chance. I couldn't keep fumbling it. She tilted her face up, her expression warm and open. "You can make it up to me now." This time, when she leaned up to kiss me, I steeled myself and let our lips meet. She tasted like strawberries and wine, sweet and soft. She pressed closer, wrapping her arms around my neck, her body molding to mine. I hesitated, just for a breath, and then kissed her back. I braced a hand on her waist, trying to lose myself in the warmth of her touch, the shape of her against me. But somewhere beneath the kiss, beneath the softness of her skin and the curve of her smile against my mouth, something inside me remained distant. A part of me that couldn't shake off that feeling of wrongness. Celeste was my home now, and I exhaled, pulling away. Her hands hung on my shoulders, blinking up at me in question. "Key?" I forced a smile through the hazy fog of emotions in my chest. I held up the bag of takeout. "We should eat." She shook her head, took the box out of my hand, and set it on the console table in the foyer. "I can't think about food right now," she whispered as she gripped my shirt and pulled me to her again. I tried. I really, really tried. I owed Celeste that. But when her hand slid under my shirt, warm against my skin, a shiver rocked through me. Her body pressed against me, soft and unfamiliar, and something inside me froze. I pulled back slowly and caught her wrists, gently stilling her. "Celeste." She exhaled and looked at me, her expression already shifting. "What now?" "I can't," I said, my voice barely held together. "Not tonight." Her face fell, just slightly at first, a flicker of disbelief. Then something deeper. "You can't. Hurt, quiet, raw, and rising fast, or you don't want to?" "No, what? It's not that. I scrambled for the right words to say, to fix the cracks I could sense opening between us. "I'm not ready, Celeste. I don't want to pretend I am and hurt you more because of it." She looked at me for a long, tense minute and then let out a quiet scoff and took a step back. I felt the distance immediately, and I was appalled by my lack of will to close it. Tension lined Celeste's body. Her back was straight, her shoulders tight, but I could feel her composure slipping. "You're not ready." She spelled out each word as if it were a code she was trying to decipher. "Celeste, I've been alone for 10 years, she said suddenly, her voice flat. "When I left, I thought it was the right thing, space, time, whatever. But it hurt like hell, Kieran, and I missed you so fucking much." "I missed you too," I said, and I meant it. She let out a soft, bitter laugh. "Yeah, I'm sure you spent the last 10 years pining after me while married to my sister." I took a step closer. "Celeste, I did." "You don't see it, do you?" she whispered. "You're acting like nothing's changed." like she still belongs in your life, like I'm the one who doesn't. It's not like that, I rushed to say, but the words felt thin in my mouth. She wiped her eyes with a quick swipe of her fingers, smudging her mascara. I thought coming back would mean something, that I'd still matter to you, that we could resume where we left off before, her. You do matter. She wrapped her arms around herself, and her voice was bitter with sarcasm when she said, "Yeah, I feel pretty fucking important right now. Wait." I caught her wrist as she started walking away. "Don't go," I said, the words catching in my throat. "Please." She shook her head slowly, pulling her arm out of my grasp. "Good night, Kieran," she said quietly, flatly. I wanted to fight harder, make her stay, but all I could do was stand there, paralyzed by guilt and confusion. And then she was gone. The door closed behind her with a quiet click, and the emptiness crowded me. I stood in the foyer for a long time, staring at the door, my hands clenched at my side. The silence around me felt louder than any argument, and Celeste's words seemed to bounce off the wall, an echo of pain. "You're acting like nothing's changed, like she still belongs in your life, like I'm the one who doesn't." "Fuck," I swore, running a hand of frustration through my hair. Sarah didn't belong in my life, not anymore, and I couldn't understand why I couldn't let her go. Why was I still stubbornly holding on to a woman I never really wanted, at the expense of the woman of my dreams? I'd hurt Celeste 10 years ago by what Sarah and I had done, and now I was hurting her again because I couldn't seem to fucking let go of Sarah. Celeste was all that mattered to me now, and I had to fix it before it was too late. So I forced my heavy legs to move and grabbed my keys. I was halfway to Ethan's house, where Celeste was staying, when my phone rang. Daniel's name lit up the screen like a tiny ray of sunshine piercing storm clouds. "Hey, champ," I greeted, forcing a light tone. "It's way past your bedtime. What are you doing up?" "Hi, Dad. I couldn't sleep, so I called Mom to talk to her, but I couldn't reach her." My grip on the wheel tightened, mirroring the force with which irrational anxiety gripped me. "I'm sure she just went to bed early, bud." "Well, okay, but she always answers my call. Can you check on her?" "Yeah," I nodded, forgetting he couldn't see me. "I'll take care of it. Good night, Danny." I hung up and immediately called Gavin. "Hey, what's up? I need a status report on Sarah," I said, trying to keep my tone even. Gavin sighed. "Kieran, I have no time for a lecture, Gavin," I snapped. There was a heavy sigh and a mumbled, "Gimme a minute." And then, "She's home. The last hourly report shows a male matching Lucian Reed's description entering the house with her. He hasn't exited since." A chill spread in my stomach as I pulled the car over to the side of the road. "How long ago?" I bit out. 52 minutes ago. Lucian. In her house. For an hour. Doors closed. Phones off. I sat in silence for a moment, the engine humming around me. All thoughts of reconciling with and apologizing to Celeste took a back seat. The longer I sat, the more insistent that prickly tension grew inside me. I couldn't stop picturing Lucian and Sarah behind closed doors, laughing, talking, doing God's know what else. I hated how my mind filled in the blanks with images I didn't want but couldn't escape. By the time I hit the gas again, I wasn't thinking anymore. I barely remembered the drive, just the blur of streetlights and a knot twisting in my chest, tighter with every block. When I pulled up outside Sarah's house, Lucian's car wasn't in her driveway. But that new information did nothing to quell the volatile energy thrumming through my veins. I walked up to the door and slammed my fists against it insistently. A moment passed, then another, and then the door opened. Sarah stood there in a loose bathrobe, her hair damp like she'd just gotten out of the shower. Her skin glowed with a soft, dewy sheen, and a flush colored her cheeks. Her eyes, devastatingly beautiful, widened in surprise. I didn't see Lucian. But I didn't need to. My eyes took her in, the robe, the damp hair, the faint scent of lavender drifting out into the night air, and my brain came to its conclusion. "Where is he?" I asked, my voice low, rough, her brows pulled together. "What?" I stepped closer. "Where is Lucian?" I was going to tear him apart limb from limb. "Kieran, what the fuck?" But I couldn't answer Sarah. The jealousy, the frustration, it all swelled to a breaking point. My eyes swept over her again, and I hated how badly I wanted her, how much it wrecked me to imagine her with anyone else. Something in me snapped. I grabbed her by the waist, and this time she was too stunned to stop me from kissing her. Hard, Seraphina's pove. The shower had washed away the sweat, but not the frustration. Lavender ointment tingled on my bruised knuckles as I towel-dried my hair, the scent doing little to calm my racing thoughts. The failed training drills, that wretched garden confrontation, the way Kieran's gaze had burned through me like I was the one betraying him. I exhaled a deep sigh. I should stop thinking of that annoying Kieran. We were divorced. He shouldn't crash through my life like a hurricane anymore. My phone buzzed on the sink counter. Lucian, left the protein shakes in your fridge. Don't overdo it tomorrow. A small smile tugged at my lips. Lucian had stayed late under the guise of reviewing my training schedules, but we both knew the truth. He'd been giving me space to process while silently ensuring I wasn't alone. No prying questions, no false platitudes, just steady presence, the way one might guard a wounded packmate. I typed back, "Thank you, Lucian, for everything you do." Outside, the stars twinkled. At that moment, I just wanted to let the peace claim me. However, the animal suddenly fiercely banging against my door did not get the memo. With an annoyed huff, I tied my robe, and when the towel wrapped around my head fell to the floor, releasing my damp hair around my shoulders, I didn't bother to pick it up. I padded barefoot into the hallway, muttering angrily to myself, I swear, whoever was on the other end was going to... I blinked, taking in Kieran. He filled my doorway like a tornado made flesh, jaw tight, eyes stormy. His chest heaved like he'd run here. "What?" I barely got the word out before he spoke. "Where is he?" he growled. I frowned. "What?" He stepped closer, his presence flooding the threshold. "Where is Lucian?" Exasperation flowed through me, and I held back the urge to scream in his face. Had he followed us home? What the fuck was he playing at? "Kieran, what the fuck?" Then his mouth crashed onto mine. My body went rigid, frozen by sheer disbelief. Kieran had never kissed me before, but I'd imagined it 1,000,000 times. In my fantasies, it would be sweet, soft, loving. He'd take me into his arms, and we'd just sink into it, the kind of kiss love songs were written about. But this was nothing like that. It was sudden, consuming, a wildfire of need that threatened to devour me whole. His lips collided with mine like a tidal wave held back too long. Desperate, heated, possessive, like I belonged to him. I couldn't push him away. I was too stunned, too caught off guard to think, let alone move. My heart pounded against my ribs, my breath caught somewhere in my throat, trapped between longing and shock. His tongue violently opened my lips, claiming. His broad hands gripped my hips onto his firm body, my robe slipping from one shoulder under his rough handling. His gaze darkened at the exposed skin. "Kieran!" I gasped between searing kisses, fingers twisting in his shirt as the heat radiating from his beastly muscles threatened to melt my resolve. The way he looked at me, damn, sent liquid fire through my veins. But I knew it was not right. I should remind him. "Kieran, we shouldn't." Another possessive growl vibrated against my lips as he swallowed my protest with a deeper kiss, his hands locking around my hips like living shackles. My brain screamed that we were divorced, that this needed to stop, but my body arched into his touch, trembling. 10 years as his wife, and never once did he want me like this. And this time I could feel it was not just for need. When his hand slid beneath my robe, the embers of my love for him that I thought I'd already buried seemed to flare dangerously, aching too. Then a phone rang, shrill and jarring, shattering the moment like glass on concrete. Kieran tore himself away from me as if I'd burned him, and still I couldn't move. I stared at him, breathless, eyes wide, brain short-circuited. He was breathing heavily, his gaze unfocused, his entire body trembling. "Your phone," I whispered, unable to think beyond the ringing. Around us, in my head. Kieran swore softly and shoved his hand in his pocket. He turned away from me as he answered it. "Ethan, hi." Another curse. "She's crying?" A sigh. I didn't mean to. "I'll make it right, I swear." Then he hung up. "What the hell was that?" I whispered, my voice a thin rasp. Kieran didn't answer right away. His expression flickered, confusion, regret, unsatiated hunger. "Did you fight with her?" I asked, and my voice came out colder than I expected. "With Celeste?" He didn't respond. His guilty silence was answer enough. "Oh my God," I stumbled back, clutching the fallen robe to my chest as humiliation burned up my neck. I couldn't believe I'd almost repeated history. "I wasn't thinking," he said, stepping toward me. You just what?" My voice cracked. "Thought you could kiss your problems away? On me?" "Sarah." Are you out of your mind? The words tore from me raw. What am I to you? A convenient distraction? A stand-in? No, Sarah, it's not like that. Get out, I snapped, heart pounding. You have no fucking right to do this to me. He hesitated, hunger still dark in his gaze. I didn't care. Get out, Kieran, I repeated, firmer. Some nightmares aren't worth reliving. When he didn't move fast enough, I shoved him back and he stumbled back out. The door hit his shoulder as I slammed it shut and turned the lock. I stood there, breathing hard, one hand on the doorknob, the other pressed against my pounding heart. The kiss still lingered on my lips, burned through my flesh, imprinted on my fucking soul. But I'd learned enough over the past 10 years. Some paths, once broken, should never be retraced. Kieran's pove. Something was wrong with me. I stood on Sarah's porch long after the door slammed in my face, the echo of it sharp and final in the night air. My breaths came out ragged and sharp, adrenaline racing through my whole body. Ethan's call should have snapped me back to reality, to Celeste. She was hurting. She'd left my house in pieces, and instead of going to her, I'd gone to Sarah. I'd kissed Sarah. And not just any kiss. The first real one, full of heat and desire and everything I hadn't allowed myself to feel. It was a mistake. It had to be. But then why did it feel so goddamn right? I could still taste her on my lips, still remember the way her breath caught when I touched her. I could still feel the hunger gnawing at my gut, demanding more. That scared me more than anything. My phone buzzed. I pulled it out of my pocket, foolishly hoping it was Sarah telling me to come back. It wasn't. It was Ethan. Attached to the message was a photo of Celeste. She was asleep on Ethan's couch, curled up under a throw blanket, her makeup smudged, tear stains visible on her cheeks, her face soft, exhausted, fragile. The guilt punched me square in the chest. What the hell was I doing? Celeste had come back for me. She'd offered forgiveness, love, a second chance, and I'd practically rejected her. Not just in words, but in every choice I made tonight. I had let her cry herself to sleep while I chased after a woman who wanted nothing to do with me. The woman I'd used to hurt her in the first place. I closed my eyes and leaned my head against the cold wood of Sarah's door. The contrast between the heat of the kiss and the cold sinking into my bones made everything feel sharper. Too real. What if I'd ruined everything with Celeste for good this time? What if I'd ruined everything with Sarah with that kiss? I shoved my phone back into my pocket and walked away from the house, the pavement crunching under my shoes. I didn't know who I was right now. I couldn't fathom what fucked up part of me was making all these damning decisions. All I knew was that I'd hurt 2 women, one who loved me and one I couldn't seem to let go of. And the worst part? I wasn't even sure who I wanted to be forgiven by. Celeste's povey. Have you sent it? I asked, arms crossed as I leaned against the kitchen doorway. Ethan looked up from his phone and gave me a long-suffering sigh. Yeah, I sent it. I stepped forward, tension buzzing beneath my skin. And? He raised an eyebrow. Did you really need me to lie to him for you? It's not a lie, I said, pouting slightly. If anything, it's a glaring truth he needs to see. He knows you're upset. You didn't need to drag me into this. I scoffed. Ethan was always so quick to act like he was above it all, but he was the furthest thing from perfect. He needs a reminder, I said softly, of what we are, of who's always been there. Ethan rubbed the bridge of his nose. You know Kieran has only ever loved you. You don't need to compete with Sarah. My lips curled bitterly. Then why does he care so much about her all of a sudden? He hesitated. Because she's the mother of his son, and she's been through 2 attacks now. It would be strange if he wasn't concerned. I scoffed. Or maybe it's an act. Did you ever think about that? Maybe she's playing the victim, soaking up attention while pretending to be scared. She just can't stand me winning. Ethan opened his mouth, probably to defend her, but just then the doorbell rang. He rolled his eyes. That's probably him. Happy? My heart gave a small, fluttering leap as I spun around and moved quickly down the hall. I slipped beneath the blanket on the couch. I turned to face the backrest, eyes fluttering shut, body curled perfectly still. I could hear Ethan opening the door, low voices murmuring. The soft pad of footsteps approached, heavier now. Kieran. I let myself breathe slower, shallow, like I was still asleep. The blanket shifted slightly and a hand rested on my shoulder. I stirred, slowly, deliberately, and blinked like I'd just woken. Kieran. My voice cracked softly. "What are you doing here?" "I'm sorry, Celeste," he said, kneeling beside the couch. "I should never have let you leave like that." I blinked back tears that weren't hard to summon. I thought, maybe I'd lost you. Maybe you didn't want me. His brows furrowed with guilt. "No. I wasn't thinking. I messed up." I sat up slowly, rubbing at my eyes. "I get it. I know you've been under a lot of pressure with everything going on." He shook his head. "I shouldn't have taken it out on you." I nodded slowly, then gave him a fragile smile. "At least you're here." Kieran leaned forward and wrapped his arms around me. I melted into his embrace, laying my head against his chest, listening to the quiet, steady beat of his heart. I didn't say anything more. I didn't need to. He was here. That was what mattered. And as I lay there, tangled up in him, I made a silent vow. I wouldn't let Sarah come between us again. Not with her dramatics. Not with her schemes. Not with their stupid fucking history. I had to remind him of ours. Of what we could have built. Of what we could still build. And if Daniel was the strongest thread still tying Kieran to Sarah, I'd find a way to unravel it. Because I am Celeste Lockwood, and I was born to win. Seraphina's Povive. I lost focus, again. I knew it the second my foot slipped on a basic pivot, and the training stick flew out of my hands, landing uselessly on the other side of the room. In the training rooms around me, I could hear the others moving, grunting and groaning, probably doing a whole lot better than I was. Lucian had left me to train on my own today, promising to check in on me periodically. I was grateful for that because it was one thing to mess up while on my own, but a whole other thing to do it in front of an audience. This time, I couldn't even blame my distractedness on my injury. It was evident that my heart wasn't in training. My heart wasn't in anything. Not since the kiss. I could still feel it, sudden, heated, jarring. That wild, chaotic moment played on a loop in my head. The look in Kieran's eyes as he grabbed me, the strength of his grip, the heat of his lips. I was still as stunned as I was that night. I should have pulled away, but I didn't. I may not have kissed him back, but I didn't stop him. I didn't know what that meant. I tried my best to dissect it all. Why had he done it? Yeah, I knew he'd fought with Celeste, but that shouldn't have ended with him showing up on my front porch and turning my world over on its axis. It all felt so messy. You planning to actually train or just stand there with your head firmly shoved up the clouds? The sharp voice sliced clean through my thoughts like a blade. Startled, I turned. A woman I didn't recognize stood at the door I hadn't even heard open, arms crossed over a lean, toned frame. She had skin the color of caramel, dusty brown hair braided into cornrows, and dark brown eyes that slowly, calculatingly took me in. She watched me like a predator, trying to decide whether the prey was worth chasing. I fought the urge to squirm under her gaze. She arched a perfect brow and said, "If you're here to waste time, you're better off in front of a couch stuffing your face and watching sitcoms." No, I'm just thinking of a myriad of excuses, she interrupted, cold and flat, none of which will suffice. She waved an arm around and my gaze was drawn to her powerful bicep. She wasn't overly muscular, but I could see the strength rippling under her skin. "There's no place for laziness here. You might as well just leave." My cheeks burned. "I have been training." "I just wasn't." I started again, but she raised a hand. My mouth slammed shut. I didn't know what it was about her, but a quiet, simmering authority seeped out of her every pore, and I instantly knew that this was a woman whose bad side I never wanted to be on. She straightened from the wall, and my eyes tracked her as she walked across the room. Her steps were graceful, lithe, like a gazelle. She picked up the staff that had slipped from my hands. I barely had time to move when she tossed it at me, but I managed to catch it. "You've been training." It didn't sound like a question she wanted answered. "Prove it then." I raised a brow. "What?" "Fight me." My heart skipped a beat. "What?" She shrugged. "Or you can get the fuck out." My eyes widened. Where the hell was Lucian? I needed him to check in on me right fucking now. She crossed her arms and tapped her foot on the mat. "Well, if you want to stay, fight me. 3 minutes. You last, you can stay. If not," she shrugged. "Bye-bye." "Same goes if you don't fight at all." I blinked. "Are you serious?" Her body looked honed, like she'd spent a lifetime training. How was I supposed to hold my own against her? I hate repeating myself. She gestured to the open space between us. Clock starts when you move. I had the urge to laugh at the incredulity of the situation. Part of me wanted to drop the staff and walk away, but another part of me chafed against the look in her eyes, the slight derision in her tone. I was tired of being treated like I didn't belong, by my own pack, by Kieran's pack, and now this complete stranger. I'd already had so much taken from me. My marriage, my son, my fucking peace of mind. I wasn't going to let OTS be taken from me, too. So I moved, and instantly regretted it. She exploded forward with terrifying speed, and all I could do was throw my arms up and hope for the best. I swung the staff at her and winced when her boot connected with my hands, knocking it clean out of my hands, right back to where she had picked it up. Lucian would have clucked, shaken his head, and told me to go get it. She, however, did not stop. She didn't take a breath, didn't go easy, didn't hold back. Every strike she threw was calculated, clean, devastating. She was frighteningly fast, impossibly strong, terrifyingly skilled, everything I wasn't. I wasn't fighting a person, I was weathering a storm. And worst of all, she wasn't even trying. I lost count of how many times I hit the ground, nearly blacking out. Time lost all meaning, and my breaths came in desperate, ragged bursts. Every sparring tactic Lucian had drilled into my mind evaporated, and I went into survival mode. She never gave me a second to get on the offense. All I could do was dodge and block, letting her momentum work against her. Creating space when I could, little tricks, stalling, surviving, barely. Seconds dragged. My muscles screamed, my lungs burned, my head swam. Only sheer willpower, I didn't even know I had kept me standing. But I refused to give in. I wasn't weak or defenseless, and I would prove it if it was the last thing A shrill ringing pierced through the air, and she suddenly retreated. I dropped to one knee, chest heaving, blinking the nausea and dizziness away. She tapped her watch, silencing the timer, and folded her arms again. She wasn't panting or sweating. Nothing to give away that she'd just handed my ass to me for 3 whole minutes. Not bad, she said, not even a single fucking tremor in her voice. Imagine what you could achieve if you focused. I looked up at her, dazed. For a split second, she was 2 people, and I had to blink to fix my vision. Who the fuck are you? She cracked a minuscule smile and leaned down, offering a hand to help me up. Maya Cartridge. I'll be your trainer for the next phase. This was the elite trainer Lucian had told me about. Was he trying to have me killed? I hesitated, then took her hand. You held your own longer than I expected, she noted, but you'll need to do better when you face an opponent that decides to use their werewolf abilities. My jaw dropped. You didn't? She snorted. I'm a beta's daughter. If I did, you'd be in 2 halves across the room right now. I stared at her in disbelief. How had she moved like that if she hadn't used her werewolf powers? Seriously? I asked. You didn't use powers? She shook her head. Not a single drop of it. You don't have to be a wolf to move like one. You just have to train like one. She spread her arms, gesturing to herself. And that's where I come in. Her words hit deep in me, breaking through the doubt and the feeling that I didn't belong. I didn't have to be a wolf to move like one. You've got potential, Maya continued, but if you want to make it, you'll have to let go of all your distractions. She tapped her temple. Silence that voice in your head telling you that you have to be something you're not to achieve greatness. Who you are now is enough to take you to who you need to be. She cocked her head. That better not be an excuse. I huffed a laugh, hopeful anticipation brewing inside. I understood now why Lucian had assigned Maya Cartridge to me. I could tell that she was exactly what I needed. I shook my head. No excuses. She nodded and extended a hand. I took it. Like the rest of her, her grip was firm, powerful. Get some rest, Sarah. We start bright and early tomorrow. I nodded. Thank you, Maya. She gave me a slow, devious smile. You won't be saying that when I have you on your knees, puking up your intestines. My mouth dropped open, and she threw her head back, laughing. See you, Sarah. She threw over her shoulder as she walked out of the room. Her voice held promise of torture and agony, but I knew that if I could brave through that, I would come out stronger than ever. I couldn't wait. Later, as I slipped into my car, eagerly anticipating going home and soaking in a hot lavender bath, my phone buzzed. I reached for it and frowned at the name on the screen. Michelle Brenner, Daniel's homeroom teacher. Did this have to do with Daniel's absence from school? Kieran assured me he'd sorted it all out. Hello? Good afternoon, Mrs. Blackthorne. I winced. I really needed to go about changing my name, or at least letting the people around me know I was divorced. I called to remind you about the parent-teacher conference this evening. I bit back a groan. I'd forgotten about Daniel's biannual PTC. I trust you and Mr. Blackthorne will be attending together as usual? My stomach turned. The kiss had momentarily left my headspace while I was trying not to die sparring with Maya, but now it returned with a vengeance, sharp and achingly vivid. I cleared my throat. Yes, I said, forcing the word out. We'll be there. If I didn't shoot myself in the head before then, Seraphina's povie. I stared down at the text I had sent Kieran this afternoon after Miss Brenner's phone call. Daniel's PTC at 6, and his reply, I know, I'll be there. I dreaded seeing him again after the kiss, a knot of unease and discomfort pulling at my stomach. I should have saved myself the mental energy. The parent-teacher conference was nearly over and Kieran still hadn't shown up. I kept glancing at the door, waiting, fucking praying he'd walk in at the last second, his usual scowl in place, ready with an apology. But the door stayed closed. His seat next to me remained empty. And every tick of the clock only made the hollow pit in my stomach grow deeper. I pulled out my phone again and called him for the 5th time. Straight to voicemail. No message, just that cold, empty beep. Miss Brenner had asked me for the 6th time if my husband was coming, and I'd told her, he's just running late, 5 more minutes, 6 times. I couldn't sit in that uncertainty any longer, so I called Gavin. If anyone knew where Kieran was, it'd be him. Hey, Gavin, I said, keeping my voice steady. Like the rest of Kieran's pack members, I didn't have much of a relationship with Gavin, but unlike the rest of them, he'd never shown hostility to me, at least not outwardly. Sorry to bother you. Do you know where Kieran is? There was a pause, just long enough to set me on edge. Yeah, he finally answered. He's out with Celeste. My heart dropped. Celeste. Of course. I took a deep, calming breath. Okay, thanks, Gavin, I said, forcing my voice to be steady. I ended the call and stuffed my phone back into my purse before I threw it across the room in frustration. Mrs. Blackthorne? I looked up and forced a smile when Miss Brenner smiled down at me and asked the same question for the 7th time. Can we expect Mr. Blackthorne soon? She'd had her one-on-one with all the other parents and students in Daniel's class, and now it was just me and her in the classroom. I gave her an apologetic smile. I'm so sorry for keeping you waiting, but it turns out that I caught myself. Daniel's father won't be able to make it. Oh, I hope there's no problem. There was named Celeste. I shook my head. Oh, no, he just got too caught up with work. Right. She nodded. So if she could sense my sour mood, she made no indication. Well, shall we begin? Yes, I took a deep breath. Let's. How is Daniel, by the way? She asked. The whole class misses him. He's doing well, thank you. He has a tutor who comes in every day, so he's up to date with his schoolwork. She nodded. Good. I have no doubt that he'll do well and will be up to speed by the time he returns. Do you have any idea when that might be? I pursed my lips. No. Soon, hopefully. Okay, then. Well, let's dive deeper, shall we? She looked through a file in her hand. Academically, Daniel is excelling. He's reading above grade level. His math skills are strong, and his writing shows real thought and creativity. My next smile was genuine. He's really a brilliant boy. He always pushes himself. She smiled. It shows. He's also extremely kind and demonstrates a great deal of emotional intelligence for his age. He always raises his hand, helps his classmates, and volunteers to lead group projects. He's respectful, empathetic, and very self-motivated. Pride swelled in my chest like a balloon and was immediately deflated by the fact that Kieran wasn't here to hear all the amazing things about our son. One thing, though, Miss Brenner added. Has Daniel been going through any changes lately? I stiffened slightly. What do you mean? Well, for the past few days before he left school, he seemed more withdrawn. Children are sensitive and are very attuned to their environment, and changes within that environment can affect them. Once again, I asked myself if getting divorced was the right thing to do, especially for Daniel. The thought of my baby being affected by Kieran's and my separation made my heart ache. I'll pay more attention to his well-being, I said thickly. Thanks for pointing it out. Miss Brenner smiled kindly. Of course. As you know, we usually have a segment where our students share their thoughts about the academic experience, and since Daniel's not physically here, could we video call him? My heart lit up with the usual happiness when I was about to see Daniel. Yes, of course. I pulled out the encrypted phone and video called Daniel. I set up the phone between us, and my heart skipped a beat when the screen lit up with his bright, expectant face. Mom? I beamed. Hi, baby. His gaze shifted, and he waved, his smile widening. Hi, Miss Brenner. Hello, dear. It's good to see you. Everyone misses you in class. I miss them. His gaze shifted to the space beside me, and his smile froze. Where's Dad? My heart cracked at the way his voice wavered. Sweetie. He had to work. He's really sorry he missed this. The words tasted bitter in my mouth. I didn't want to have to cover for Kieran like this. He should have shown up for his son. But my anger wasn't important right now. What was important was the way Daniel's face crumpled with confusion and hurt. He promised, he whispered, his voice shaking with too much fury for a 9-year-old. This morning, after breakfast, he promised he'd come. He said he wouldn't miss it for the world. I guess Celeste was more than the world. I reached for words, anything to patch the wounds I could already see forming. He didn't mean to break his promise. I sighed. Things came up. But Daniel had already stopped listening. His chin trembled slightly before he looked away. He's a liar, he muttered, angrily swiping at his cheek. My heart completely broke at the tears spilling down his cheeks. Danny. He shook his head obstinately. I'll never forgive him. Honey, please don't be mad. Miss Brenner is telling me some amazing things about your schoolwork and... I don't care, he said. What's the point of working hard to make Dad proud if he won't even show up? I choked back a rogue sob. Oh, baby, I'm proud. He smiled softly, but it didn't reach his eyes. Thanks, Mom. Bye, Miss Brenner. Dan. The screen went blank. I sat back in the chair, numb and burning at the same time. I'd worried about how our divorce affected Daniel. Worried I'd inadvertently hurt my son. But it was Kieran who had initiated the break. He was the one who broke his promise to our son. He chose Celeste over Daniel. Mrs. Blackthorne. I gathered my things. Thank you, Miss Brenner. I think we're done for the night. Daniel's teacher sighed. Children look up to their parents, and I shook my head, cutting her off. I'm not the one who needs to hear that. I showed up. My steps faltered as I walked out of the school and saw him. Kieran. He was rushing toward me from the parking lot, looking disheveled, messy hair, wrinkled dress shirt. What the hell had he and Celeste been up to? His eyes widened when he saw me, an apology written all over his face. I huffed and forced my legs to move, intending to walk past him. But he caught my arm, turning me around to face him. Sarah, wait, I'm sorry. I glared at him, fury rising like wildfire. You're sorry. He ran his hand through his hair, further mussing it up. I lost track of time. I was with Celeste and... I couldn't help it. I laughed. It was either that or scream in the parking lot of an elementary school. Of course you were with her. You weren't just late, Kieran. You chose not to be there. You chose her. It wasn't like that, he said, face twisting in frustration. I didn't mean... I don't care what you meant, I snapped. All that matters is what happened, and what happened is that you didn't show up for your son. There was an exhibit of projects. Daniel made the cutest birdhouse. His teacher sang his praises. And you weren't there. He worked himself to the bone to make you proud, and you couldn't even show up. Kieran looked like he wanted to argue, like he had 1,000 excuses just waiting to pour out. But I didn't give a fuck. He cried, I continued, my voice sharper. You promised him, and he trusted you. He believed in you. And now he's saying he never will again. Do you know what that means? What that does to a child? Kieran stepped forward, his face set like stone. It won't happen again. I stared at him, feeling like I was looking at a stranger. The Kieran I knew was honorable. A man of his word. This man, who kissed his ex while prancing around with her sister and then broke promises to his son. I didn't know him. You say that now, but what happens the next time Celeste calls? What happens when you two eventually get married and have a child? The words caused an inexplicable ache in my chest, but I shoved that feeling aside and focused on my anger. How far will Daniel fall on your list, then? His jaw clenched. Don't say that. I will, because it's the truth, and someone has to say it. You already made your choice. But I swear to you, Kieran, I stabbed a finger in his chest, and his eyes darkened. If you hurt Daniel like this again, I won't stay still. I will take him and we'll go, and you will never see him again. Kieran looked like I had dropped a flash grenade in front of him, and for once, he was silent, no comeback, because he knew I meant it. Daniel was the one thing in the world I didn't take lightly, and I would be damned if I let anybody, least of all Kieran and fucking Celeste, break my baby's heart. Kieran's povey. I didn't expect Daniel to shut me out so completely. 3 calls ignored, 12 texts left unread, each unanswered attempt carved deeper into my chest. I felt the distance like a physical ache. It was cold, sharp, brutal. I'd always believed myself a good father, present, devoted enough. But now I wasn't so sure. He'll never trust you again. Sarah's words haunted me, razor-sharp and unforgiving, worse because they were true. I'd crushed a child's fragile faith beneath my boot like discarded trash. When my phone finally rang, Mother's voice held none of her usual warmth. Your son cried himself to sleep, clutching that robot model he wanted to show you. I flinched. You sound just like Sarah. Good, she hissed. That girl should have chewed your ear off for what you did. If I needed more proof that I had epically fucked up, that was it. My mother had spent a decade sharpening her contempt for Sarah. When even Sarah's greatest enemy took her side, I hadn't just failed as a father. I had become the very weakness I'd spent a lifetime despising, a coward behind his excuse. My excuse for letting my son down was flimsy at best, absolutely ridiculous at worst. I'd been out with Celeste, forgetting the responsibilities in my life like a teen lacking a fully developed frontal lobe. I'd been so desperate to mend what I'd broken between us, to prove I could still be the man she once wanted. So when she begged me to take her to Six Flags Magic Mountain, I went like an obedient mutt instead of the alpha I was supposed to be. When she snatched my phone and tucked it into her purse, no distractions, Kieran, just us. I didn't challenge her. And when I finally realized how late it was, when she pouted and asked me to drive her home first instead of rushing to Daniel's school, I fucking agreed. Sarah was right. I'd chosen Celeste over Daniel. I'd upgraded from shitty ex-husband to shitty father. I'd forgotten the one thing that should have been carved into my bones. My son. My brilliant, kind-hearted boy who still looked at me like I hung the moon, even when I didn't deserve an ounce of his faith. And I'd shattered him, made him cry. The self-loathing clung to me like the stench of blood after a hunt. After an eternity of my mother's scolding, "You're lucky he's even willing to speak to you," she finally relented, played mediator, convinced Daniel to give me one last chance. I clung to that opportunity like a drowning man clings to driftwood. Then the screen flickered to life, and the moment I saw his face, it felt like I'd taken a soccer ball to the chest. "Danny," I exhaled, running a hand over my face. He wouldn't look at me, his gaze fixed somewhere over my shoulder, on the painting behind me, the one of the mountain range he'd always loved. High, flat, empty. My chest caved in. He used to light up when he saw me. Now I'd drained that light dry. I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Bud, I'm so sorry. You have no idea how much—" Was it because of Celeste? His voice was sharp, too sharp for a 9-year-old. Ice flooded my veins. Had Sarah twisted his mind against me? Against Celeste? "Danny, whatever your mom told you." Mom didn't say anything. His glare finally snapped to mine. "She never does. But I saw it myself, yesterday, on the video call. That woman was sitting in our kitchen like she owned it. You were with her, right? That's why you didn't go to my school." My jaw worked soundlessly, a damned alpha rendered speechless by his own pup. There was no defense, no excuse that could dull the betrayal in his voice. "I don't like her, Dad." His gaze locked onto mine, eyes burning with conviction. "Daniel." I dragged a hand down my face. "If you'd just give her a chance." "No." He shook his head firmly. "I don't want her around us, around me." That stubborn set to his jaw, that was me. The same unyielding pride that had once made me challenge my father's orders. Except Daniel wasn't just stubborn, he was right. And I was the one who'd lost his way. "She's family," I rasped. "No." His voice dropped low, eerily mature. For a heartbeat, it felt like he was the alpha, and I was the pup being put in my place. But I was still his father. He needed to understand. "Listen to me, son." I forced steel into my voice. "Celeste and I are together. It's serious." A pause. Then the blow I'd hoped to deliver gently. "One day I'm going to marry her. She'll be your stepmother." His breath hitched. Guilt ripped through me. This wasn't how he should have found out. I'd wanted to ease him into it, let him adjust. Instead, I'd gutted him. Silence. Then, so quiet it shattered me. "What about Mom?" The question knocked the air from my lungs. I could still taste Sarah on my lips. I'd kissed her. Held her like she was still mine. But that was just another mistake. "Your mom and I are divorced, bud. You could fix it." His voice cracked. "You could go back." Did I want? The truth was a living thing, clawing behind my ribs. I thought about her constantly, the scent of her skin, the way she'd gasped when I kissed her. "No." I clenched my fists. "We won't." "But why?" His small hands balled into fists. "Mom's awesome. Why don't you love her?" "I do. Not like how you do to Celeste." The way he said her name was a curse. I stared at him, struck dumb. Since when did my 9-year-old understand this better than I did? "Mom always put us first, even you." Each syllable was a condemnation, peeling back the lies I'd told myself. Sarah had sacrificed everything, her pride, her happiness, her very breath, for this family. While I'd been blind to it. Worse, I'd expected it. Took it for granted. "Nobody can take her place." His voice cracked with a rawness. "She will never be my mom." The screen went black before I could respond. Silence, the kind that comes after a gunshot. I sat there, hollowed out, Daniel's accusations echoing in my skull. He was right. I treated Sarah like a discarded toy, something to be consumed and forgotten the moment Celeste, my shiny new obsession, came back into my life. I never even considered the damage it would cause, the people I would hurt. A knock. Celeste slipped in before I could answer, her jasmine scent flooding the room. My muscles locked. "How'd it go?" She perched on my desk, all sympathy. "He hates me." The admission tasted like blood. Her pout was practiced. "Oh, Kieran, he's just a child." He looked at me like I was a stranger, like I'd become one. She slid into my lap, fingers tracing my neck where the mating mark should be. I let my hands settle on her hips out of habit, but my skin prickled. Wrong, this was all wrong. "Is Daniel why we haven't?" Her breath was warm against my jaw. I stiffened. The truth? No. The reason lived in the way my pulse didn't stutter when she touched me, in how my wolf stayed dormant in her presence, in the dreams where another woman's eyes haunted me. But I couldn't say that. So I nodded. Celeste's lips brushed my cheek, a claim. "I'll make him love me. We'll be perfect." Her certainty should have comforted me. Instead, my gut twisted. Because Daniel's hatred wasn't just childish resentment. My son was extremely intuitive, the kind that sensed rot beneath pretty surfaces. Maybe his fury was from something deeper. Seraphina's pove. It was an enjoyable morning. The sun streamed through my kitchen window, and for the first time in months I felt light, hopeful. Every muscle screamed in protest as I measured flour, but the pain had become an old friend, one whose constant presence meant progress. I had started training with Maya, and if Lucien was a sadistic bastard, then she was the devil herself. "You've got more in you, Sarah," she'd snarled yesterday, her boot nudging my trembling thighs during yet another impossible drill. Dig deeper. And somehow I always made it. The memory of her rare praise still warmed me. Advanced techniques, real progress. Each bruise was a stepping stone toward becoming someone who could stand unshaken between Daniel and the world's cruelties. Today called for celebration. I turned up the radio, letting the upbeat pop song guide my movements as I danced between counter and bowl, flour dusting my arms like battle scars. The sweet scent of vanilla filled the air. The doorbell screamed through the house, one endless electronic wail. My good mood wavered as the shrill noise continued, over and over, like whoever was pressing it had gone into an electric shock and had their finger locked on the doorbell. Judging by my track record of visitors and the aggressive way my doorbell was being abused, there were only a couple of guesses who could be on the other side. I wiped my hands on my apron, already bracing for impact. The door swung open to reveal Celeste, her designer sunglasses perched atop her perfectly styled golden waves. Of course. Before I could speak, she shoved past me, her shoulder knocking mine with deliberate force. I didn't turn around right away. I stared at the empty driveway, my eyes fixed on a sprinkler in the yard of the house across the street. Give me strength, I silently prayed to every deity in existence. I finally turned. Celeste looked gorgeous as always, her golden hair curled around her face like a halo, ironic because she was the furthest thing from an angel. And right now she looked like a serpent, poised to strike. "Stay away from Kieran," she snapped, like some bitter queen issuing a decree. I dramatically turned, my head swiveling like I was looking for something. "Do you see me with Kieran?" I asked, desperately holding on to the earlier bliss I could already feel slipping away. "Don't play coy with me," she hissed, taking a threatening step toward me. "I know what you're doing. I see through all your little tricks. What's next? Are you going to plan another attack to catch his attention?" I closed my eyes and breathed through my nose deeply. 1 breath, 2, 3. When I opened my eyes, she was still standing before me and hadn't burned to ashes like I'd desperately hoped. "I'm not doing this again with you, Celeste," I said, crossing my arms. She scoffed. "Tough shit. Because I'm doing it with you, how are you going to do it this time? Another gunshot is too obvious. Maybe an ambush? Home invaders?" She stepped even closer, stabbing a manicured finger at my chest. "Share with the class, Sarah. What conniving ways are you going to use to make sure no one suspects you this time?" A sharp, angry burst of laughter escaped me as I swatted her hand away. "Are you serious right now?" I asked. "If anyone should be the suspect in that attack, it's you." I narrowed my eyes at her. "You had the motive, and I wouldn't put it past you. Anything to secure your precious Kieran." Celeste sneered. "Like I would waste my time on you. You're not worth the effort." I spread my arms, gesturing around the foyer. "Yet, you're here, having yet another bitch fit." I cocked my head to the side. "How bored are you, that you've penciled incessantly harass Sarah even though she's blissfully minding her own business into your calendar?" Celeste's entire body vibrated with rage. "You smug bitch," she hissed. "You think you're clever? It's not enough that you're a fucking obstacle. You had to go and drag Daniel into this?" The mention of my son immediately set me on edge. "Excuse me?" Celeste noticed my change in demeanor and her glossed lips curled like she'd just played her winning card. "You heard me. That brat of yours has been nothing but trouble since I returned." She took a step closer. "One more outburst, one more refusal to accept me, and I'll make sure Kieran ships him off to some remote boarding school in Switzerland." The world narrowed to the pulse pounding in my ears. "Let's see you manipulate situations when your precious Daniel is 6 time zones away," she purred, close enough now that I could see the flecks of gold in her cold blue eyes. "No more video calls, no more parent meetings, just silence." Something inside me snapped. The slap cracked through the room like a gunshot, my palm connecting with her cheek with enough force to snap her head to the side. Celeste staggered back, her manicured hands flying to her face in shock. For a heartbeat, there was perfect stillness. Then, "If you ever," I snarled, surging forward to grip her throat, "so much as whisper my son's name again, I will end you." My voice shook with barely contained fury. "Not a threat, Celeste. A promise." Her fingers fluttered weakly against my wrist. For the first time since barging into my home, genuine fear flickered across her face. "Now get the fuck out." I shoved her back hard enough to make her stumble, "before I decide to give you matching cheeks." The hatred in her eyes burned like acid, mirroring the fury I knew shone in mine. "You'll regret this," she croaked, rubbing her throat, though the venom in her voice remained. A bitter laugh tore from my throat. "The only thing I regret is ever believing you had a shred of decency." The door slammed behind her with enough force to make the framed photos on my walls shudder. One of Daniel and me at the beach last summer tilted dangerously before righting itself. Silence. The kind that rings louder than any scream. My pulse roared in my ears, adrenaline still coursing through my veins. The sting in my palm should have felt satisfying. Justice for her vile threats, but it only left me feeling empty. Each encounter with Celeste since her return had been worse than the last. A disturbing escalation from petty jabs to outright warfare, and now she'd crossed the one line I'd never allowed anyone to cross, threatening to harm my son. The realization hit me like a physical blow. Kieran chose this. He chose her. Either he was willfully blind to the monster she'd become, or worse, he simply didn't care. My good mood had dissipated, and I abandoned my baking project, instead grabbing a tub of ice cream and curling up in front of the couch. I hoped mindless TV and sugar would take my mind off the altercation with Celeste, but Half an hour later, my door burst open, and I knew that was a pipe dream. Kieran stormed into the living room like a thundercloud, and I fought the urge to scream. Why wouldn't these two just leave me alone? You struck her? His voice was dangerously quiet, the kind of calm that comes before a hurricane. I set the melting carton aside with deliberate slowness, pausing Chandler's sarcastic quip mid-sentence. Going to ask for my side? I kept my voice level, though my fingers dug into the couch cushions. His lip curled. I know exactly what happened. Celeste came to you in good faith, seeking advice about Daniel. A bark of laughter escaped me. Seeking advice? Is that what we're calling threats now? Enough. His roar shook the windows. Just admit the truth. You can't stand the thought of her being his stepmother. I couldn't believe my ears. The ice cream in my stomach curdled into acid. Marry her if you fucking want, I hissed. But if you or that bitch lay one finger on my son. My voice dropped to a deadly whisper. I will burn your entire world down, Kieran. He scoffed, advancing like a predator cornering prey. You still don't understand. You have no say. Because you. His lips twisted. You never mattered. My breath hitched, his words landing like a blow. You never did. Not when we got married. Not when we lived together. His gaze flicked to my lips, darkening. Not even when we fucked. You were a mistake, Sarah. Venom dripped from every syllable. If you hadn't slithered into my room that night, if you hadn't trapped me, Celeste would be Daniel's mother, as she should have been. I searched his eyes desperately, for remorse, for the man I'd loved, found only a void. It's always been Celeste. Every time I touched you, I closed my eyes and pretended you were her. You were just convenient. My palm cracked across his face before he finished, sending his face to the left. If I owned my wolf, his throat would have been torn out. You don't get to rewrite history, I rasped, hands shaking. Not like this. Kieran's head snapped back, but his expression hardened into something inhuman. Don't I? A cruel smirk. You played the whore to get this marriage, flaunted our sex life in Celeste's face. Did you think there wouldn't be consequences? My palm cracked across his other cheek, the impact vibrating up my arm. The sting in my hand was nothing compared to the agony shredding my chest. Hot tears threatened, but I clenched my jaw. I'd be damned if I let him see me break. Out! The word tore from my throat like shrapnel. Now. Something flickered in his expression. Too little, too late. With strength I didn't know I had, I shoved him toward the door. Listen well, Kieran Blackthorn. My voice was steel wrapped in shattered glass. My only regret is ever loving you. That night with you, I'd have rather fucked a stranger. The door slammed on his stunned face. When I was finally alone in the room, I unraveled. I collapsed onto the carpet, banging my left knee on the coffee table on the way down. The pain that exploded was nothing compared to the agony piercing my heart. Sobs ripped through me like bullets from a machine gun. Rapid fire, loud, ugly. I pressed my hands to my ears, trying to drown out Kieran's words, but it was like applying a tourniquet to an arm after the poison had already reached the heart. Why? Every time I clawed my way forward, every time I tried to move on, they ripped me open again. Seraphina's Pove. The training room clock had long since blurred into meaningless numbers. Hours? Minutes? Time didn't matter. Only the burn in my muscles, the raw ache of my knuckles, the way my lungs screamed for air but got none. Each jab carried Celeste's sneer, "You're not worth the effort." Every hook bore Kieran's venom. You never mattered. I hit harder, faster, letting the pain overwrite them like a virus corrupting old files. If I stopped, even for a second, I'd hear them. I'd feel the stabbing agony of their words. I couldn't afford that. If I let the words sink in, they would take root, grow branches, vines, wrap around me and choke me from within. Damn, what did that poor dummy ever do to you? I startled, whipping around to find Maya by the door, just like she'd been the first day we met. I was panting so hard I couldn't answer her, and that split second of distraction brought the venom back. You were a mistake, Sarah. I spun back around and continued to attack the sparring dummy. It didn't have a face, but Celeste's and Kieran's kept flashing on the blank canvas, and I hit even harder. I didn't know when Maya moved, but the next thing I knew, she had a firm grip on my wrist, pausing my swing. "You're going to break your wrists if you keep going like that," she said. "And you'll burn out." For a moment, I just stood there, fighting to catch my breath, debating whether struggling against her when I knew I was going to lose was worth it. Finally, I staggered back, and Maya released me as I slumped down to the mat. She sank, too, with a lot more grace than I could ever muster. She wordlessly handed me a water bottle. The sound of me greedily chugging the contents of the bottle filled the room, and when I was done, I felt slightly better. Every time I touched you, I pretended you were her. I closed my eyes, fighting the urge to scream, anything to drown out the fucking noise. Come on. I looked up to see that Maya was standing again. She had a hand stretched out to me. We're getting a drink. I shook my head. I'm not in the mood. She crouched, her brown eyes pinning me. When your trainer tells you to do something, what is your reply? I rolled my eyes, remembering the first rule she drilled into me during our first session. Maya, this isn't. What is your reply? I sighed. Yes, Miss Cartridge. Her lips twitched, and she held her hand out. Let's go. I smell, I complained weakly. She wrinkled her nose like she'd just noticed. You're right, you do. She wiggled her hand impatiently, and I finally took it, letting her pull me to my feet. We sat outside on the patio behind the OTS dorms. Maya procured a fancy bottle of Cabernet Sauvignon, which we sipped from plastic cups from the cafeteria, watching the sky deepen into dusk as a cool breeze brushed against our skin. The silence wasn't uncomfortable, it was actually kind of nice. Until Maya broke it. So, want to tell me why you're attempting to murder yourself and a sparring dummy on your day off? I exhaled, staring down into my cup. I twirled it slightly in my hand, watching the liquid slosh around. It's a long story, I said softly. She leaned back, folding her arms. Then you're lucky I'm a good listener. I shook my head. I don't. Your trainer just told you to do something, Sarah. I looked up at her. Though she had on her usual stern countenance, her eyes held a softness I'd never seen before. Yes, Miss Cartridge. The words tumbled out of me, halting at first, then fast and uncontrollable. I told her everything, the mistake I made 10 years ago, the night I let my guard down, lost my inhibitions, and committed an irreversible mistake. The punishment that came after, how my family shunned me, how I was branded a disgrace, how I spent the last 10 years, alone, unloved, worthless. I told her about Celeste's return, about how I'd somehow remained the villain in their story even after the divorce. I didn't dare look at her when I finished. I didn't know Maya all that well, but she struck me as a disciplined person, someone upright, who valued honesty and hated weakness. I expected her to flinch, to withdraw, to look at me with the same disdain I'd received my whole life, but she didn't. She just let out a soft sigh and said, "You've been through hell." I blinked, my gaze darting to her. "Of course you've made mistakes, Sarah. Who hasn't?" she continued. "But being wolfless, that wasn't your fault. And that one night? Last I checked, it takes at least 2 people to have sex, and unless you're Mary, you didn't make Daniel all by yourself." I huffed a weak laugh at that. Maya placed a hand on my shoulder and squeezed. "I'm sorry you were let down. I'm sorry you're hurting." I opened my mouth, but no words came. I hadn't been expecting this level of sympathy, and I didn't know what to do with it. There was pressure building in my eyes, and I was horrified that I might cry in front of Maya. "I just wish Lucien and I had met you sooner," she said softly. "If you'd been brought into OTS back then, maybe you wouldn't have had to endure all that alone." Yep, I was going to cry. Maya once again surprised me by pulling me into her arms. She held me as I wept, and I clung to her like a lifeline. The tears flowed out of me unabated, but instead of my heartache growing, it felt like the pain was ebbing, like the tears were washing it all away. Suddenly, I felt less pathetic, less broken. Understood. Maya's words replaced Celeste's and Kieran's. Everyone made mistakes, but the punishment I'd suffered had far outweighed the crime, and I was done serving it. I was done letting Kieran and Celeste poison my life with their toxicity. I woke up the next morning with a kind of clarity I hadn't felt in years. It felt like the weight of guilt and regret I'd carried around for 10 years had been lifted. I felt lighter, an actual spring in my step. It was time to move forward, for me and for Daniel. Training was better. I felt less inclined to decapitate the innocent sparring dummy, and I think my tears had softened Maya because she went easier on me than usual. Not that I was complaining. Still, Maya's version of easy had me collapsing to the floor when we were done. Struggling to breathe, My vision swam as she waved something in my field of vision. I frowned, grabbing the flyer. "What's this?" "A trial for all OTS trainees," she said. "It's in 3 months. It's a critical test to evaluate your progress." I sat up. "And you want me to participate?" She nodded. "Lucian thinks so too." But my mouth was suddenly dry. The other trainees had been training longer than I had. Most of them had wolves, which was a given advantage. Maya nudged my knee with her boot. "Get out of that head. If I didn't think you'd be ready in 3 months, I wouldn't ask you to do it." She cocked her head. "But I am asking you to do it." A small smile spread on my face. If Maya and Lucian thought I could do it, then I probably could. It struck me that I had more people in my corner than I initially thought. Lucian, Maya, Daniel. Daniel. Oh, he'd be so proud of me if I did well. That cemented my decision, and I looked up at Maya. Yes, Miss Cartridge." She returned my smile and tilted her head towards the door. "Now go hit the showers." I pushed myself to my feet and headed out. I frowned when I saw that the light in the hallway was off. I felt my way to the common area I had to pass to get to the locker rooms. Just as I stepped in, the lights clicked on, momentarily blinding me with their sudden intensity. "Happy birthday, Sarah!" I staggered backward, stunned, taking in the room. Confetti, balloons, streamers, an actual banner with my name on it. Some of the trainees were grinning like idiots. Lucian was holding a cake, and Maya appeared from behind me, throwing her arm around my shoulder. "Happy birthday, Sarah." She beamed at me. I blinked slowly, my heart clenching in my chest. I rarely celebrated my birthday. My birth nearly killed my mother, and my father never let me forget that. He'd scowl every year when the date came around and saw any form of celebration as a personal affront. And after I got married, well, let's just say birthdays were the last thing on anyone's mind. Only Daniel ever remembered. So when my phone buzzed earlier today with a birthday greeting, I thought it was from Daniel. However, when I checked, it wasn't. It was from Kieran. "Happy birthday. Hope you're well." I stared at the message for a long moment, strangely numb. Then I locked the screen without replying, and now I pushed that thought out of my mind, determined not to let Kieran pop the balloon of happiness swelling inside me. For once I was surrounded by people who actually cared. People who chose me, not out of obligation, but out of respect. And this year, for the first time in a long, long time, I felt like there was actually something worth celebrating. I was someone worth celebrating. Kieran's Vive. I stared at the read receipt, wondering why the hell I had sent the message in the first place. I knew there would be no typing bubbles, no reply. Why would there be? Did I really expect a birthday greeting and those 3 meaningless words, "Hope you're well," to fix it all? After what I said to her, after what I did, how could that ever be enough? Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face. Not the hardened Sarah who'd pushed me away these past months, not the defiant woman who'd looked at me with ice in her gaze. No, that day she looked wrecked, shattered in a way I'd never seen before, not even when I asked for a divorce or when we had to send Daniel away. And it had been my doing. Celeste's reddened cheek, her tear-streaked story. They'd ignited a rage so blinding I hadn't stopped to question. Hadn't considered that there might be another side. I'd stormed into Sarah's home and, God, I'd unleashed. Every cruel word was a weapon wielded for Celeste's sake. I deserved that second slap. Deserved far worse. But nothing had prepared me for the pain in Sarah's eyes. It truly cut. The way each word had trembled as she fought to keep herself together. The way she'd said she'd rather have been with any strangers that night instead of me. The door slamming in my face had been the wake-up call I needed. In that moment, I'd understood exactly how far I'd fallen. But when I raised my hand to knock again, to beg forgiveness, the sound of her sobs through the woods stole all my courage. Those broken, gasping cries hurt more than any physical blow ever could. Coward, my wolf Ashar sneered at me. The days bled together, each one heavier with regret. Today, her birthday, had been my flimsy excuse to reach out. I stared at my screen, and even though I knew it was no use, I waited. Even a go to hell would have sufficed. It would have given me something, an opening. The chance to say the one thing I hadn't had the decency to say that day, I'm sorry. But the screen stayed dark. Nothing came. Fine then, I didn't deserve an easy way out anyway. I'd berated her physically. It was only right that I apologize physically. The thought of seeing Sarah again made me restless as I got into the car. I didn't even know what I planned to say, if anything at all could reverse those awful, ugly things I'd said. I tried to practice on the drive over, but by the time her house came into view, my mind was still a blank slate. I was about to pull into her driveway when my foot slammed the brake. A familiar Aston Martin was pulling in ahead of me. I watched, tense, as the engine shut off and Lucian fucking Reed stepped out of the driver's side. I gritted my teeth, irrational anger tightening my muscles. The guy was everywhere, like a fly buzzing around Sarah. He walked over to the passenger's side and opened the door with a flourish, bowing slightly. My breath hitched as Sarah exited the car and her musical laughter floated in the night air, a startling contrast to those gut-wrenching sobs I couldn't get out of my head. I heard my wolf, Ashar, murmur, "What do you know? Lucian makes her laugh. You make a cry." I rolled up my window to mute the sound. Sarah's arms were full of flowers, little gifts, and pastries wrapped in bright cellophane. Her cheeks were flushed, and I desperately wanted to blame it on the cold. But it was a warm evening. And that smile she fixed on Lucian, genuine, unguarded, radiant, hit me like a punch to the chest. I hadn't seen her smile like that in, ever. I watched as Lucian stretched his arm out, relieving some of the load in her arms. No wonder she looked so happy. She'd celebrated her birthday. He'd probably done that for her. Something I never once did in the 10 years we were together. They walked side by side to her door, smiling at each other. They formed a nauseatingly lovely picture, and I felt something ugly twist in my gut, jealousy, bitterness, that ever-present regret. "This is good, isn't it?" I heard Ashar whisper. "It's what you want, right?" Ashar was all the best parts of me, powerful, honorable, noble. I doubt he approved of my extremely errant human nature. And as usual, he was right. This was good. It was for the best. Sarah had found someone else. She could finally move on. She deserved to. And it would make it easier for me to commit to Celeste. No lingering complications. No tangled past. So why did it feel like something in my chest was tearing? Why did every fiber of my being revolt at the idea? I was trying to make sense of it when I heard a knock on my window. I flinched, caught off guard. Lucian, a growl built up at the back of my throat as he gestured for roll my window down. I gritted my teeth as he leaned down through the opening, folding his arms on the window ledge. "She had a good birthday today," he said calmly. "She said she can't remember the last time she had a good birthday. Don't ruin that." My jaw clenched and Ashar chafed. Who the hell was Lucian to dictate what I could or couldn't do with Sarah? I felt my hackles rise. I didn't give a fuck that he was an alpha. "Let's have a drink," he said suddenly. I blinked, surprised. There was no smugness in his voice, no challenge, just an offer. I don't know why I said yes. Maybe I wanted to feel like I still had some kind of control. Maybe I wanted to size him up. Or maybe I just didn't want to go home. Back to my thoughts. We ended up at Luna Noir again, seated at a private booth at the back, reserved for alphas. The crowd was thin today, the atmosphere subdued in a way that perfectly reflected this unorthodox meeting. I nursed my single malt scotch the same way he did his vodka on the rocks. Neither of us took a single sip, and I suspect it was for the same reason. Neither of us was willing to let our guard down around the other. "You don't like me," Lucian said plainly, leaning back in his seat, surveying me with dark, calculating eyes. I snorted. "No shit." He smirked, but his eyes held no mirth. "I don't like you much either, but I respect what you meant to Sarah. Meant." The tense of that word unsettled something inside me. Without another word, Lucian brought out his phone, tapped on the screen, and pushed it towards me. I looked down at the footage playing, grainy at first, then clearer. Sarah, training, sparring, running drills, practicing strikes. Her form improved with every clip, and the way she moved, focused, determined, it caught me off guard. She looked confident, powerful, nothing like the timid, fragile woman I'd convinced myself she was. "You all made her feel like she was broken," Lucian said quietly. I couldn't tear my gaze away from the woman, the stranger, I was watching. Like she was weak and worthless. You punished her for a mistake she didn't make alone. Something clenched in my chest. "That's none of your business." "Oh, but it is," he said smoothly. "Everything that concerns Sarah is my business now." I stared at him, fury coiling low in my gut. Did this bastard really think he had any claim over her? I hadn't forgotten his declaration, his intent to pursue her. But from what I'd seen, Sarah hadn't fully accepted him yet. Though I wasn't sure how long that would last. I took a sharp swallow of whiskey, letting the burn down my throat smother the violent thoughts rising in me. I had Celeste. Why the hell should I care which man Sarah chose? Get to the point. Lucian leaned forward, his voice dropping. If you still care about her, Kieran, and I suspect you do, let her go. Stop reopening her wounds just because you don't know what to do with your own guilt. My hand clenched around my glass. I wished he wouldn't talk to me like that, so patronizingly. It made me want to shatter my glass against his temple. More than that, I wished his words didn't make sense. I glanced at the footage that was still playing on Lucian's phone as tension coiled in my body. Everything I'd discovered about Sarah since we got divorced, her successful writing career, the backbone she'd apparently always had, this strength, led to one crushing conclusion. I'd held her back all these years. I was more than her ex-husband and the father of her son, more than a part of her past. I was an anchor that had only ever dragged her down. And now that I was out of her life, she was flourishing. Lucian's pav. I could see it in his shoulders, the way they tensed like drawn wire. Kieran was barely holding himself together. The infamous Alpha of Nightfang, known for power that could shake battlefields, was now one step from breaking my neck in this very room. But I didn't flinch. I couldn't afford to, not with Sarah's future on the line. I'm not here to provoke you, I said evenly, eyeing the glass he had in a vice-like grip. But there are truths you need to hear, whether you like them or not. This isn't even about you to begin with. His eyes flared, sharp and wild like a cornered animal. Careful, Lucian. I nodded once. For Sarah's sake, I will be. I wasn't rash or brute like Kieran. I knew how to play the long game, and that meant picking my fights wisely. But I won't be silent. I swiped across my phone screen, switching from the training footage to Sarah's performance breakdown. Her metrics were impressive. More than impressive, they were exceptional. She had raw talent, and she was relentless and determined. She took everything I and Maya threw at her, and she came back stronger. No matter how many times she went down, she always got back up. And yet, I knew that this wasn't even her full potential. There was still a burden she carried around, pain and guilt and shame knotted deep inside her, weighing her down, holding her back. A burden given to her by the very people who claimed to be her family. They had clipped her wings before they ever had the chance to spread, dulled her instincts, ruined her self-worth, and punished her for mistakes she should never have borne alone. I would not let them do it again, not on my watch. She's thriving, I said quietly, not taking my eyes off Kieran, who couldn't take his eyes off the screen. But she could be so much more. If she's ever going to reach her full potential, you need to stop dragging her back into the muck of your indecision. He bristled, and his eyes snapped to me. Indecision? I shrugged. Even a blind person would see that you're swinging between Sarah and her sister like a pendulum. A muscle flexed in his jaw. That's none of my business. Yes, you've mentioned. I leaned in. But as I've also mentioned, anything concerning Sarah is my business. Kieran scoffed, shaking his head like he didn't want to hear it. You think you know her better than I do? You met her, what, a month ago? 2? And you were married to her for 10 years, and yet I see her more clearly than you ever did, I replied, voice calm but firm. I don't know the dynamics of your relationship, but if any part of you ever loved her, if any part of you respects her, you'd stop making her relive the same wound over and over again. You'd let her heal. He stood then, jaw clenched. I remained seated. Let him tower over me if that made him feel better. I don't care who you think you are or what you think you know, he hissed. But my business with Sarah is... And what about Celeste, I asked. A vertical line formed between his brows. What about Celeste? I flicked the display again, this time pulling up the 2-month evaluation from our compound, Celeste's. It just seems to me like you're focusing on the wrong woman. I let him read the data in silence. Celeste's numbers, despite having equal access to training, gear, and personnel, were abysmally low. She was barely keeping pace with an average Omega recruit. Her form lacked discipline, her drive lacked consistency, and her instincts nearly non-existent. Maybe if you weren't so concerned about her sister, who isn't yours to be concerned with anymore, you would be able to help Celeste. A low growl rolled through him. That's my future, Luna. Show her some damn respect, he said through gritted teeth. I'm not here to insult or disrespect her, I said, before he could erupt. But facts are facts, and numbers don't lie. Celeste and Sarah were evidently not cut from the same cloth. Sarah had what it took to be something great, something formidable. Celeste did not. I tapped my fingers against my glass. I respect her reality, not your illusion of her. Both women need very different things, and you can't give them that or protect them by standing in the middle, Kieran. Your indecision will end up destroying both of them. He didn't answer right away, but I saw it in his face, the crack in his armor. He was starting to understand that the best thing he could do for Sarah now was to get out of her way. Let OTS train her, guide her, and protect her, while he did the same for the woman he had chosen. He did not get to eat his cake and have it. I wouldn't allow it. After a long pause, he gave a stiff nod, and I saw how much that concession cost him. Fine, he exhaled. I will work with Celeste, help her improve, and you. His throat worked, and I imagined the words clawing their way up his esophagus. You handle Sarah. He leaned down, bracing his hand on the table as he looked me dead in the eye. If I were a lesser being, I would have shrunk under the weight of his menacing glare. But if I ever find out OTS has any foul intentions toward her, if you even think about hurting her, I'll be the first to answer for it, I said without hesitation. But rest assured, Kieran, I didn't build this place to hurt her. I built it to give people like her a chance, one she was long overdue. He gave me a long, loaded look. Then he left. I watched his powerful strides eat up the distance between our table and the door. Once he was out of sight, I let out a slow breath I hadn't realized I was holding. I finally took a gulp of my drink, letting the familiar burn ease the tension between my shoulders. I hoped I had gotten through to Kieran. I hoped he would stay away from Sarah from now on. He was hurting her, weighing her down, and worst of all, he was confusing her. I couldn't have that. Not right now, not when I was so close. I raised my head as someone slid into Kieran's empty seat, and I arched a brow. Reese. My beta gave a short, respectful nod. How did it go? He asked. I shrugged. As well as can be expected. He held out his phone to me. It's the lab. I tensed briefly before taking the phone from Reese. I put it to my ear. Alpha, good evening. Report, I said. We secured the DNA, one of the lab aides replied. The sample you provided was adequate. My lips twitched. By sample, he meant Sarah's cake fork I'd swiped when I so graciously helped her with her empty plate. And? Just as you predicted, the results are aligning, though additional samples are necessary for full confirmation. Fine, I said. She sweats all over OTS. Continue discreetly, but under no circumstances is her health to be compromised. Understood? Understood, Alpha. The line went dead. I stared at the dim screen in front of me, a strange sensation coiling in my chest. Something. Hopeful. So have you decided? Reese asked. Or do you want to wait for the final results? I exhaled slowly, ruminating on the question. The results weren't confirmed yet, not officially. But I didn't need paperwork to tell me what I already knew in my soul. Sarah was the one I'd been searching for all this time. Not because fate said so, but because I did. I nodded once. Solemn. Sure, I've decided. Sarah was the one, my long-awaited Luna.